Bonjour, Kinamagian in Ireland and Dijnakas, and welcome to this production of the My Math Network. Today's episode, the Chapter 6 test review. We're using the review from the packet. If you do not have this packet available, you could pause the video and go get it. If you really don't have it available, you can use notebook paper to follow along with us and then be able to just make sure that you check your answers with us. I will be going over selected problems in each section and giving you a chance to practice one and then going over those answers. If at any point on here you're like, I don't understand this particular skill, you should reach out to me via email and I can try to send you a link back to something or give you an explanation via email, as our assessment will be during our next class session. I'm going to begin with vocabulary, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the answer key on for this one. We're not going to take the time to match, but we will talk about each of these words and then give you a little example. So commutative property is C. The order in which factors are multiplied does not change the product. 7 times 5 is 35. 5 times 7 is 35. You think back to your math fact families, the two multiplication problems had the same product or answer. Yeah, that's commutative property. Compatible numbers, that's E, numbers that are easy to multiply mentally. Sometimes we talk about this in the sense of rounding, but compatible numbers don't always follow the rounding rules. You might have situations where instead of rounding up to a particular digit, you might round down because it's easier to do. And it's always going to be based on whether you can make numbers that you can do in your head easier. This is particularly true when it comes to division because you're going to want a compatible number that will go in where your divisor will easily go into your dividend. Identity property, A, the product of any factor in one is equal to the factor. And this is something that we've rehashed a few times throughout the school year. Anytime, if I go 3 times 1, it's 3. 9 times 1, it's 9. If it was 190 million times 1, it's 190 million. Your first factor and your product are the same because you multiplied by 1. You have one group of. Number 4, associative property, that's an F. The grouping of factors does not change the product. If I had the numbers 2, 3, and 4 to multiply, and I put 2 and 3 together in parentheses, and parentheses are what you're looking for, I'd have 2 times 3 in parentheses times 4. But I could change the grouping and put 2 times and then put my 3 times 4 in the parentheses. In both of those situations, the product will be the same. Didn't change the order. I just changed who was hanging out with who. Number 5, powers of 10, that's D. Numbers like 10, 100, and 1000, because they can be written as 10 to the first, 10 to the second, or 10 to the third. I will point out that sometimes you hear 10 to the second is 10 squared, 10 to the third is 10 cubed. What these really do is tell you with the exponent how many zeros. So I have a 1 and 1 0, and that's 10. 10 squared is 100. I have a 1 and 2 zeros, and you see them right here. And then 10 to the third for 1000, I have a 1 and 1, 2, and 3 zeros. So if I had 10 to the 347th, I'm going to have a 1 and 347 zeros. During a Google form, these are a little tougher to type, and you will see let's get my annotation tool here, how I will ask you to write those. Let's say 10, and then there's a caret above the 6, and this is how I'd write 10 to the third. Google Forms do not have the nice, easy exponent key, so this is what we would use. Go ahead and clear that. And finally, rounding, B, finding the approximate value of a number. That's where we use whether There's a 0 to 4 to keep it the same. 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, we'll send it up. And we always determine that by looking to the number to or digit to the right of the place value to which we're rounding. So 14, 4 would keep that 1 the same, but have it rounding to 10. But 15, 5 goes up, so round up to 20. All right, let's turn this answer key off before we go to the next page. And we're going to review. And what I'll do on these sections is do one, and then you'll do one. But I will do it for you to see. All right. Let's actually get to that part. There we go. So this part says estimate each product. And you want to do that before doing the math. I know that my whole number here is probably going to stay the same. And for all of these examples, that would be a good choice. And then I'm going to either use a compatible number or round 4.80. And generally, I want to at least go to the whole number for what we're doing here in 5th grade math. So I have a 4, I look to the right, that's an 8, that's going to go up. 5 times 5 is about 25. I'll use my $sign to appropriately label. All right, I want you to go ahead and try number 8. And you'll do that by pausing your video and then unpausing the video when you're ready to check your answer. You may pause the video now. Welcome back. So let's look at what we have. Something times 4. We have a 3 here. I look to the right. That's going to keep it at 3. So 3 times 4 is 12. Over here, we have a good example of a compatible number that you didn't have to do. 10.8 would round to 11. And 11 times 7 for some of you might be easy. But I could actually, on this one, go 10 times 7 and have it's about 70. That's an example of a compatible number, whereas in 7 and 8, we used rounding. So let me clear those drawings. All right, now we're going to actually multiply. I'm going to do number 10, and then I will ask you to do number 12. So let's go ahead and do 10. And when I have did a situation like this, 1.8 times 6, remember your commutative property. I can do it so that it looks more like that. Whereas if I put 6 on the top and 1.8, I've got to go 8 times 6, put a space, and the next row have a 1, and it's going to be more complicated. If you're multiplying by a 1-digit number, always put that at the bottom. So now I go 6 times 8 is 48. Think of that little rhyme. I regroup the 4. 6 times 1 is 6. Plus 4 is 10. I put a 0 here, and I'm going to move the 1 there. And then to do these problems, you have to say, okay, how many decimal places? And there's 1 digit after the decimal place here. So there needs to be 1 digit after the decimal place in my product. So I can come backwards, and it's 10.8. Why don't you go to do number 12? It's a little tougher problem, but I want to challenge you. And then we'll see how you did. So go ahead and pause the video and take care of that now. Welcome back. Let's see how you did. This one's a little tougher of a problem. 1 times 6 is 6. 1 times 1 is 1. And 1 times 7 is 7. So far, it doesn't seem real difficult. But now we're going to use our standard algorithm because so far, this is the same as multiplying any whole number. So I'm going to go 7.16 times 2, or 716 times 2. But that's not really a 2, it's a 20. So I'm going to put a 0 there because 20 is 2 times 10. Now I go 2 times 6 is 12. I'll put a 1 up here. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. And 2 times 7 is 14. We go ahead and add 6, 3, 10. Regroup and put the 1. So we get 5 and 1. But now where do I put my decimal point? I have 1, 2, 3 digits that come after decimal points within my factors. So there needs to be 3 digits after the decimal point in my product. So I go 1, 2, and 3. And my answer is 15 and 36 thousandths. Standard algorithm, count the digits after the decimal place in your factors. Make sure there's a corresponding number of digits after the decimal place in your product. So I'm gonna go ahead and clear that. Let's go to the next section. Tell which property you used. I'll do 13. And I'm going to use associative. I'm going to type that because that's easier. And my answer, and how I do this in head, is I'm basically going to change it to like that. So now I'm going to have 5 times 2 is 10, plus those 2 zeros. So 1,000 times 1.3, which is going to equal 1,300. How did I know where to do? To add these, there are 3 zeros, so I move it 3 spots, 1, and then I need to annex 2 zeros, 2 and 3 to get it there. All right, you go ahead and do number 14, and let's come back and check our answer. You may pause the video now. Welcome back. You're also going to be using associative, and you're going to put these together. 2 times 50 is 100, times 5.6. There are 2 zeros. So I'm going to start with my 5 and my 6. Starts here, 1, 2. So I have to annex a 0. My answer is 560. And you do have to write it down. Associative. Basically, if you're seeing parentheses, it's probably associative. If you're seeing it times 1, it's probably identity. If you're seeing just the changing of the order of numbers, it's likely commutative. All right, let's go ahead and clear those. Next section here, we're going to estimate each quotient. And we're going to follow the same rules that we did in multiplication, but I want to make sure that my divisor will go easily into my dividend based on the whole numbers. If this was a 3, I'm not going to want a 20 because a 3 does not go into 20 easily. A 4 will. And even though this would round up to 21, we're going to keep it at 20. And then 4 goes into 20 5 times. Go ahead and do number 16, and then we'll talk about 17 together as well. So go ahead, pause the video, and do number 16. Let me pause now. Welcome back. Let's see what we had. We have an 8 and we have a 24. 8 goes into 24. So let's keep those. And that's a 3. If, by the way, you happen to be doing this on a Google form, this is how you would write it. 24. Use the backslash under the key question mark. Oops, 24 divided by 8 equals 3. This can be used as fractions. This can be used as division. Google Form, unfortunately, does not have an easy to use division symbol, so we're going to utilize that. All right, so let's look at number 17 just as a freebie here from me to you, and you don't have to do it ahead of time. But I look here and I have a 10 and I have 118. I could go 118 divided by 10 and have it 11.8, but this is where I would go 120 divided by 10. Then I can just get rid of a 0 and a 0, and I'll have my answer being about 12. We want to make these things easy to do in your head. I'm going to go ahead and clear the drawings, and let's get into 18, 19, and 20. I'll do number 18, and I'm probably going to ask you to do number 20. And number 20 is going to be tough, but you'll get it. So I start out here. I'm going divided by or 10 to the squared, or 100. That actually tells me I just have to move my decimal place 1, 2 spots. So now my decimal is going to come after the 1. So it's 1.026. Very simple here. Let's look at how to do a problem like 19, and I'll do this one for you as well. I have 1.8, I have 0.08. I don't want to divide by a decimal. So what I have to do is I need to get this after the 8. And if I want to move the decimal place 2 spots, I have to multiply by a 1 and 2 zeros, or 100. So 1 and 2. So I'm going to have 8 out here. This is how you'll do number 20 as well. But I can't put my decimal right there. I have to move it 2 spots over because I moved this 2 spots over. If I multiply this by 100, I have to multiply this by 100. So it goes over 1 and 2. So 1 and 2. And then I can put it right there if I wanted to. You should always put your decimal immediately above, and we'll see if we actually need that. 8 goes in 18 twice. 2 times 8 is 16. Subtract. I get a 2. I'll bring down the 0. Still going to be a 2. 4. Let's move this up here for the moment. I do want my 0 there now. And I can keep adding zeros. I get a 40. And now I have 5 there. 5 times 8 is 40. And we're done. 22.5. Decimal points go directly above where they were in your dividend. All right, why don't you go ahead and do number 6, or number 20, sorry, and that's 12.71 divided by 6.2. Remember that you want your decimal point here and what you need to do. So go ahead and pause the video and we'll see how you did when you come back. Welcome back. Let's see here. We're going to have to move the decimal place by multiplying both sides by 10. So that's going to give me 62. I'm going to write it up here because I know I ran out of space there. Into 127.1. First trick is I always put my decimal place point right up there so I don't forget. And I know that 62 goes into 127 twice. It's going to be 124. I subtract, get a 3, bring down, I get a 31. 62 is double of 31, so I'm going to put a 0. And this is where I'm going to multiply. 0 times 62 is 0. And I still have 31. This is where I started annexing zeros. Put a 0 up there to bring down 310. And I remembered that 62 was double of 31. So 31's half of 62. So I'm going to start with a 5. Because that's half of 10. 5 times 2 is 10. Put a 0. Regroup the 1. 5 times 6 is 30. Plus 1 is 31. And that's what I'm going to need. Put a 0. So my answer is 2.05, or 2 5/100ths. If at this point you're still having issues, please reach out to me at office hours or give me an email. But this is that last piece is knowing where to move your decimal point. Otherwise, everything else is the standard algorithm. Put our tool back. Right. In our next session, we will be having our Chapter 6 assessment. Do your best, and we will remediate anything that comes up. I know that the standard algorithm is scary, but it shouldn't be, because you know your steps: divide, multiply, subtract, check, bring down. Sometimes said is compare and then bring down. Either way works. If you're still stuck, please reach out to me at mireland@sagchipschool.net. We will be engaging in this same lesson in class. So if this is before class, you could still come and join us and be able to ask questions right there. I hope you all have a Minogishigad. Minwa, Baba P.